Fox 13's Jennifer Dowling has a look at the latest information and just what Kohberger was doing in the weeks leading up to this arrest.
Investigators have now cleared the apartment where Bryan Kohberger lived, and students here on campus are now asking why he's accused in these murders.
I shocked like the whole day yesterday.
Graduate student Gaurav Narang is trying to think back to conversations he'd had with his neighbor Bryan Kohberger to see if anything stands out. Narang didn't want to appear fully on camera, but told us the two exchanged texts and talked occasionally on the stairs near Bryan's second-floor apartment.
He was very talkative and friendly person.
Narang says Kohberger was passionate about criminology studies and his PhD.
He would talk about he wants to know why people commit crime, what is the key reason behind crimes, and how people think while committing them.
When Narang heard police were looking for a white Elantra weeks ago, he didn't think much about it.
I knew that he drove a white Elantra, but I didn't know that cops are looking for an Elantra. We wouldn't know that, okay, Bryan could be the guy, because his personality does not match whatever the incident happened. I knew that he drove a white Elantra, but I didn't know that cops are looking for an Elantra. We wouldn't know that, okay, Bryan could be the guy, because his personality does not match whatever the incident happened.
I think WSU is a very peaceful university and communities, and I never thought this happened.
This graduate student lives across from Kohberger at the apartment complex. She didn't know him, but wants to know why.
I also feel very sad for our students because, this is really out of my imagination.
The Latah County prosecutor said after Bryan is extradited to Idaho, more details could be released on what led them to believe he was connected to the murders. First, he'll be scheduled for hearings in Pennsylvania. Meantime, early Saturday, police continued to secure the home where the students were killed. Also, a new statement was released from WSU saying the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University is aggrieved by the alleged horrendous acts of one of its graduate students. We are relieved that justice will be carried out. Our hearts are with the victims' families.
He had told me around first week of December, I think I met him last. He had told me that he's going to visit his home.
Narang knew Bryan was going back to Pennsylvania for the holidays.
Not a hint of stress on his face or something.
Before he left, he says he showed no sign of involvement.
There is nothing suspicious after the Moscow incident which could point, okay, this could be the guy.
Reporting in Pullman, Jennifer Dowling, Fox 13 News.
Did you have any inkling that something was coming?
No, we had no idea. They hadn't released any information, had no heads up about anything. I think I received a call it was about 10:30, I think, on Thursday night. No, we had no idea. They hadn't released any information, had no heads up about anything. I think I received a call it was about 10:30, I think, on Thursday night. And from the Moscow Police Department letting me know that they were in the process of taking someone into custody. They didn't release the name or any of that information to us that night. I immediately called the family and spoke with them. They were obviously, happy and relieved to a certain degree. And then I got more information, more details about who the defendant was in the case the next morning.
Propaganda noun, propaganda noun. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a particular cause, doctrine, or point of view. He was charged with distributing enemy propaganda, a propaganda campaign. The dissemination of propaganda has a political strategy. The party's leaders believed that a long period of education and propaganda would be necessary. Origin. Italian from modern Latin Congregatio di Propaganda Fide Congregation for Propagation of the Faith, see Propaganda. Propaganda dates from the early 20th century. Quoting Encyclopedia Britannica, propaganda is the more or less systematic effort to manipulate other people's beliefs, attitudes, or actions by means of symbols, words, gestures, banners, monuments, music, clothing, insignia, hairstyles, designs on coins and postage stamps, and so forth. Deliberateness and a relatively heavy emphasis on manipulation distinguish propaganda from casual conversation or the free and easy exchange of ideas. Propagandists have a specified goal or set of goals. Comparatively deliberate selectivity and manipulation also distinguish propaganda from education. Educators try to present various sides of an issue, the grounds for doubting as well as the grounds for believing the statements they make, and the disadvantages as well as the advantages of every conceivable course of action. Education aims to induce reactors to collect and evaluate evidence for themselves and assists them in learning the techniques for doing so. It must be noted, however, that some propagandists may look upon themselves as educators and may believe that they are uttering the purest truth, that they are emphasizing or distorting certain aspects of the truth only to make a valid message more persuasive, or that the courses of action that they recommend are in fact the best actions that the reactor could take. By the same token, the reactor who regards the propagandist's message as self-evident truth may think of it as educational. Card stacking refers to any time one party creates a setting where they can hold favor over their opponent or of an opposing idea. Card stacking propaganda is when a party shows only the positives associated with their side and omits or severely downplays any negative details that may exist. One of the most famous posters of World War II, Someone Talked, urges Americans to prevent sensitive information from falling into enemy hands. As FDR ordered Japanese Americans into wartime incarceration camps. False reports of a Japanese attack set California skies ablaze with anti-aircraft fire in the Battle of Los Angeles. Americans supported the war effort with scrap drives and victory gardens. What was the famous code in WW2? The Enigma cipher. Decryption of the Enigma cipher allowed the Allies to read important parts of German radio traffic on important networks and was an invaluable source of military intelligence throughout the war. What are the 7 propagandas? The ultimate guide to propaganda. In 1939, social scientists Alfred and Elizabeth Lee first classified propaganda as a collection of 7 commonly used techniques in their book The Fine Art of Propaganda. Those 7 techniques were defined as name-calling, glittering generalities, transfer, testimonial, plain folk, card stacking, and bandwagon. What is fear propaganda? A fear appeal is a persuasive message that attempts to arouse fear in order to divert behavior through the threat of impending danger or harm. It presents a risk, presents the vulnerability to the risk, and then may or may not suggest a form of protective action. Famous propaganda phrase: that liberty shall not perish from the earth. Wake up, people. To meet the government's objectives, the OWI Office of War Information used common propaganda tools, posters, radio, movies, etc., and specific types of propaganda. The most common types used were fear, the bandwagon, name-calling, euphemism, glittering generalities, transfer, and the testimonial.
Anything else at this time. Moscow police say they responded to the area around noon Sunday after they had reports that someone was unconscious. When police arrived, they found the 4 victims dead. The circumstances at this point are unknown. All we knew for several hours was that there was a homicide investigation here, and that was through a vandal alert, a notification sent by U of I to students around 2, asking them to shelter in place. Washington State sent a similar alert to its students a few miles west in Pullman, minus the shelter in place, saying there wasn't a threat to the WSU community. U of I lifted their shelter in place just before 4 p.m., about 2 hours after their first alert, saying Moscow police didn't believe there to be an active threat to the community. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered with this happening in a neighborhood that's predominantly made up of U of I students. Investigators on scene say they're in for a long night. Reporting in Moscow,
On November 25, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., WSU Police OFFIC Daniel Tingo queried white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate LFZ 8649. This vehicle was registered to Brian Koberger, hereafter Koberger, residing at 1630 Knee Valley Road apartment, 201 Pullman, Washington, 1630 North East Valley. Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way. Last CSNCRA location foul picked up the white Elantra. The same day at approximately 12:58, WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman. In the parking lot, 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Koberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Koberger's Washington State driver license, information, and photograph. This license indicates that Koberger is a white male with a height of 6 and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Koberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Koberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Also on the 29th, November 2022, the 5 vehicles are towed from the 1120 to King Road home. An Othram invoice dated the 29th of November 2022, due on the 29th of December 2022, shown by multiple media sources, such as the Idaho Statesman. I think it's fair to say that there have been people of interest to the investigations and everyone that they've investigated so far they've been able to exonerate, the prosecutor told Enton. The needed to correct things said in the interview that Thompson used the word exonerate in that he did with Enton. That's not weird. Perhaps exonerate isn't the best word, but they've been able to eliminate them as being a suspect. Amazing! 24 hours after locating the Elantra, Pepper Rogers makes His first appearance. What does Papa Roger's first post mention? Leads me to believe they found the sheath. November 30th. Recently I asked how Mr. Wilson felt about the person behind the Papa Rogers FB account using an image to represent themselves, which seems to directly link his church to this crime. I did not receive a response. However, there is a video that was uploaded at the start of November that I do consider it is a reply.
News. Just a moment ago, Moscow police confirmed 4 people were found dead in a home just steps away from the University of Idaho campus. Right now, we're continuing to work to get more details tonight. We know that students were ordered to shelter in place for a time this afternoon because of the scene's proximity to campus. That order has been lifted. Krem 2 crews traveled down to Moscow as reports came in earlier today. We go now to Janelle Finch, and she was one of the first reporters on scene to talk with police and with neighbors in the area. Janelle.
I've been here in Moscow on scene since about 3 p.m. Since I've been here, I've watched Moscow police cars come in and out of this neighborhood, where officials found 4 people dead. Neighbors say they began noticing police cars flood the area around 12 p.m. today. Moscow police say they responded to a call here on King Road for an unconscious individual. Upon further investigation, officials found 4 people dead. While police investigated the scene, the University of Idaho enacted a shelter-in-place alert as university officials reported a homicide near campus. As we've stated, that alert is lifted at this time. Neighbors say most people living in this area are a part of U of I Greek life or are students, but we do not know the identities of those involved or who lives at the residence. Officials are investigating. This is a very much developing situation, and we will continue to stay on the grounds until we have more information to report back to you. Until then, in Moscow, Janelle Finch, Krem 2 News.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And Krem 2 will stay on scene in Moscow throughout tonight, and we'll continue to bring you an update coming up during our 6 o'clock newscast. Thank you so much, Janelle.
Rather clear to me that Papa Rogers is a person close to the case who also has a grudge against those targeted in Stickergate.
Seen pictures, still no suspect in the murder of 4 Idaho college students stabbed in their sleep. Families mourning their loved ones while looking to the police for answers as agonizing weeks stretch on. News Nation's Brian Enton joining us live now from Moscow. And Brian, some of these family members are frustrated. Are we any closer to a suspect than we were 3 weeks ago?
Unfortunately, not that we know of, Natasha. The latest we have heard from police is that there is still no known suspect and not even any persons of interest. The prosecutor told me this week they don't have any video of a suspect on camera. Prosecutor told me this week they don't have any video of a suspect on camera. Prosecutor told me this week they don't have any video of a suspect on camera. And they're still soliciting tips from the public now, 3 weeks after the murders in the house behind me. You can see this is still a crime scene tape. The police department here has hired private security to keep an eye on the house at all times as the victims' families grow frustrated. I spoke with Kaylee Gonsalves's family, her mom and dad and sister, who say they're just growing impatient and they want more information from the police.
Is anyone acting differently since the murders? I mean, is there anyone that you have a weird feeling about that the girls knew or that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say not in the immediate circle by any means, but a few of the names that have been circulating around, I think it's hard not to kind of, dig into this. And I don't know how much of that is just because we have so little information from law enforcement and how much of it really is, a sister or a father's intuition.
can you elaborate at all? I don't know. You don't have to give a name, but I mean, is it someone that she knew, or?
I have something to say about that. I just feel like there's been a couple individuals that were cleared very fast. That may not, maybe shouldn't have been. And yeah.
She had the strong alibi.
Just really fast.
You can dismiss.
An hour later, and we're like, what? And I don't know. I don't know anything about those individuals. I just know they were people that, definitely should have been looked at, and
I don't know what would prevent you from sharing somebody's alibi.
Yeah, I think that's what we're struggling with. So it's like, we know what we know. We've, fought for Jack, Kaylee's boyfriend, and, we still stand that way. So I did just kind of want to clear that up while we're talking through this ambiguity that, that's not what we're honing in on here.
We don't want to make more victims out of innocent people.
Exactly.
We definitely don't want to do that.
And so what the family is talking about is there's been a number of people involved who police have said have been cleared at this point. The family is saying they want to know what the specific alibis are. They want to know the evidence and proof of why police cleared those people. Also, Xana Kernodle, that's another one of the victims. For the first time, her mom spoke out last night to Ashley Banfield. Something very interesting. She revealed that Xana's father was actually at this house within a week of the murders. Listen to what she said.
Her father mentioned to me that he had just went and replaced the lock the weekend before.
You said her father mentioned to you that they had replaced the lock?
Yes, that he had fixed it or something. But yeah, he said that he had fixed it the week before, just to make sure.
The week before.
It's interesting because the way this house is set up behind me, there's a coded lock on the front door, and then we're told the bedrooms, at least most of them, have individual coded locks into the bedrooms. So the fact that her father changed the lock is interesting. We're trying to figure out how the killer got into these rooms. Were the doors open or were they closed? All of that still under investigation.
That kind of just tells you who he was, because he wasn't tied to everyone in that room. Ethan wasn't supposed to even be there. And, from what Ethan went through, that this guy just wasn't a man of character. He was just poorly built. And, there isn't going to be some kind of connection that I would think that would explain this. Like, behavior could explain somebody being this brutal to another human being. I mean, he was probably obsessed with just their overall looks and their social media accounts and the fact that they were close.
It was a little bit more complicated to get it all working and running again.
It was definitely, getting that car back, because she had just put stuff in it, and I was talking to her as she was like packing it up, and she didn't, she unloaded some of it back at that house, but it mostly was all in there exactly, and it had just sit in like a time capsule for 6-7 months, that this all happened, and like her purse was in the back
She backed
seat.
up to that door right there and just put a bunch of stuff in the back. So
and
it was still there because I think
Murphy's crate was in there.
Class on Monday, and that was it.
And she was going to take some finals on Monday, and she was going to be back on Tuesday.
Yeah, I believe so. So she's just gonna throw some of the stuff from her room into her car, come back.
Killing spree. It would have been natural, instinctive to go to one of those doors. Instead, he goes up this narrow staircase and he turns directly into Maddie's room. And I think Maddie was his target.
Sources tell both Bloom and ABC News that the two surviving roommates were using their phones to communicate during and after the murders.
According to testimony that was made to the grand jury, the two girls were communicating. They were texting one another, not just after, but at one point during the killings.
Sources close to Koberger's family telling Bloom his father Michael was on edge as he picked up Brian from school that winter.
He's been reading the headlines. He knows that 4 students were killed just 12 miles from his son's house. He knows what a troubled son he has. The Moscow police issue a bolo, a stop order on a car that is a white Hyundai Elantra. He realizes my son drives a 2015 Hyundai Elantra.
And according to Bloom sources, Brian's own sister approached their dad, voicing her suspicions about Brian.
Pennsylvania, where his public defender says Kohberger was shocked by the arrest.
He believes he will be exonerated.
The lawyer reading a statement from Kohberger's family.
We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence.
He confirmed that Kohberger's father flew to Washington State to meet his son and made the cross-country road trip back to Pennsylvania with him, the father telling him he didn't notice anything different about his son.
Everything was ordinary, and he saw nothing unusual about it.
Police seized a white Hyundai Elantra at Kohberger's parents' home in Pennsylvania, the same model they say was seen near the crime scene around the time of the attack. Austin Morrison says Kohberger was a teaching assistant in a criminal justice class he took at Washington State.
Just rather quiet, very off to the side, standoffish. He sat in the class, didn't do a whole lot.
Two law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation told NBC News that detectives used genetic genealogy to track down the suspect.
It broadens the search. Instead of just looking for that one person in the database or maybe their very close relatives, we now are looking for second, third, fourth cousins and beyond. The team that did this work had a very difficult task.
Now, once Kohberger is back here in Idaho to face a judge, authorities are expected to unseal a probable cause statement. And in that probable cause statement, we are likely to learn a lot of what investigators have been keeping very close to their chest, specifically how Kohberger was caught. But some mysteries still remain in this case. One of them, the motive, and the other, if a murder weapon has yet to be recovered.
What was that conversation like?
She's a family psychologist, and she knows her brother has had problems. She goes to Michael, and she says, Dad, in effect, we have a real problem. I'm starting to believe that Brian could be involved in these killings. And what does Michael do? He can't confront it. He just turns around and walks away.
Shortly after, police arrested Brian Kohberger on December 30th, 2022.
Lawyer reading a statement from Kohberger's family.
We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an attempt to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence.
He confirmed that Kohberger's father flew to Washington State to meet his son and made the cross-country road trip back to Pennsylvania with him, the father telling him he didn't notice anything different about his son.
Everything was ordinary, and he saw nothing unusual about it.
To communicate during and after the murders.
According to testimony that was made to the grand jury, the two girls were communicating. They were texting one another, not just after, but at one point during the killings.
Sources close to Kohberger's family telling Bloom his father Michael was on edge as he picked up Brian from school that winter.
He's been reading the headlines. He knows that 4 students were killed just 12 miles from his son's house. He knows what a troubled son he has. The Moscow police issue a bolo, a stop order on a car that is a white Hyundai Elantra. He realizes my son drives a 2015 Hyundai Elantra.
And according to Bloom sources, Brian's own sister approached their dad, voicing her suspicions about Brian.
What was that conversation like?
She's a family psychologist, and she knows her brother has had problems. She goes to Michael, and she says, Dad, in effect, we have a real problem. I'm starting to believe that Brian could be involved in these killings. And what does Michael do? He can't confront it. He just turns around and walks away.
Shortly after, police arrested Brian Kohberger on December 30th, 2022.
But has he reacted to the charges at all? One can imagine being accused of something like this and saying, wait, where did this come from? Why are they coming after me? Have you seen any kind of that behavior from him?
It is a little out of character. He said, I mean, this is not him. He believes he's going to be exonerated. That's what he believes. Those were his words. So he's really been very easy to talk to, actually. And he's in a calm demeanor, like I stated.
What about his family? The mother and father, the sister, they put out a statement. What do they say about the charges against him and how what they make of this in terms of the person that they know?
They don't believe it to be Brian. They can't believe this. They're obviously shocked. This is certainly completely out of character, the allegations, and really they're just trying to be supportive with the understanding these four families have suffered loss, so that they're sympathetic towards that, and that's why it should remain really private. And they don't want to try this case in the court of public opinion. And without knowing the facts and evidence, as of right now, they don't really want to comment on things.
His father drove him from Washington State at the holidays back to Pennsylvania. I understand that was a plan that had been in the works for some time. They were also stopped by police a couple of times on the way, I think, for minor traffic violations. Do you believe that to be part of this larger investigation, or is that just a random coincidence?
I believe it to be a random coincidence. I don't disbelieve that Brian and Michael Koberger would have made that story up. There's no reason. They have been fully cooperative when they did speak with police and authorities. I know there's some reports that there's no actual evidence that they were stopped in Indiana, but Mr. Koberger, Michael, had definitely said that they were stopped twice in Indiana back to back.
All right, Jason Labar, I know it's a busy day before you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.
The Koberger family not commenting on the claims in Bloom's book. His former public defender in Pennsylvania, Jason Labar, saying, "I find it brazen that such an esteemed author would publish a book based on multiple layers of speculation, assumptions, and presumptions, while Brian Koberger, veiled in innocence, has yet to have his trial." While Bloom details Kaylee's father's tireless pursuit of answers, the Gonzalez family telling ABC News they have never spoken with Mr. Bloom about the contents of his book, and they call it fiction. A version made up by him, relying on sources that have no responsibility or duty to speak the truth. In May of last year, at his arraignment, Koberger stood silent.
Your Honor, we will be standing silent. Because Mr. Koberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge.
There's no real rhyme or reason for you to stand silent. If you truly believe yourself to be not guilty, then say it. If you want to take a plea, then say it. But standing silent doesn't stop the proceedings. It doesn't move it forward.
Investigators claim DNA evidence and surveillance footage, plus cell phone records, all link Koberger to the murders, but his attorney maintains that he had no connection to the victims. Koberger has been held at the Latah County Jail in Moscow, Idaho since early 2023, while his team builds their case, claiming he's innocent.
When will the trial take place? That's the question that the defense does not want to be answered. Their strategy seems to be delay, delay, delay. When will the trial take place? That's the question that the defense does not want to be answered. Their strategy seems to be delay, delay, delay. There's a wisdom that lawyers often say, if you have the facts, go into the courtroom and pound them. If you don't have the facts, pound the table. Well, Brian Koberger's defense is doing a lot of table pounding.
Mr. Edelman and his associates were not made privy to the non-dissemination order. But we can't undo that. And once again, that's not of the state's making. To my knowledge, everybody that has been asked to take actions of any type on behalf of the state has been made aware of those restrictions because they are our agents. And we know we are responsible under the court's order for the actions of our agents. Regardless, I'm disappointed. I also want to make clear that I'm not standing here today making a Bar Association ethical complaint against any member of the defense team. Yes, language in the non-dissemination order contains language that parrots the Idaho Rules of Professional Conduct, but the laundry list of things that the court lists, I think, are much more specific. And that's what we're concerned about. And if I'm wrong and those are in the comments, well, then maybe there's a violation of that rule, but that's not my interest. I have no interest in doing that. My interest is in taking care of this case, making sure that we can have a fair trial, making sure that Your Honor's non-dissemination order is honored, and at this point, trying to figure out a way to cure what has happened. the first thing to do is we have to say, Your Honor, the court needs to say, no, you will not ask any more questions of prospective jurors without the court approving it. Because we've seen that the people retained by the defense cannot be trusted in that regard. Fools once, shame on us. Shame on you. Fools twice, shame on us. We don't want to get into that. They wish to proceed with surveys? They can, but they need to start over.
Start over in Latah County?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no other way to get a fair comparison with any other prospective veneer without doing a new survey in Latah County and not including any of the people who were surveyed in this 400-person group.
A hearing next week could finally set a date for Brian Kohberger's trial to begin.
Our thanks to Kana. When the Night Comes Falling is out Tuesday.
I always take a conservative. Your Honor, I'm sorry, I need to object. This PowerPoint is being played for everybody with no foundation. It's not an exhibit. I think that's improper. I mean, I'm trying to listen to Dr. Edelman's testimony, and I keep seeing slides changing in front of me over here, and I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, you've seen the slides.
I have.
You looked at it.
Everybody else here hasn't.
What I'm seeing here, though, is just an explanation of how he goes about in surveys.
Understand that. That's what his testimony is. But we're getting this visual aid. There's no foundation for it, Judge.
Well, I'm viewing him as an expert. Okay? Yes, sir. He's explaining what he does. So I'm going to...
No problem with that. The PowerPoint's a problem. I don't have any problem with his testimony.
All right.
I'm sorry. Frankly, I've never seen something like that
objection. I mean, this is not necessarily factual. It's just an example of how he got to where he got.
That's his testimony, but the PowerPoint is different, Judge. I don't know why we're seeing the PowerPoint when we have his testimony.
You want to respond to that?
I do, Judge. This is a courtroom demonstrative aid that helps to track the testimony of Dr. Edelman. I can hand in my computer and let him advance the screens if that makes a big difference in it. This just helps explain his testimony.
Judge, we don't have to read it. Let's just proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Dr. Edelman, we were talking about where you get your information. We were talking about where you get your information. What media do you look at? I think that's where it was.
Yes. So I take a conservative approach to how I do it. I look at newspapers in local coverage right now. So I'm interested in papers that have primary circulation in the venue. Case like this has been reported in many other newspapers, but I wouldn't, for example, look at a newspaper published in Dallas because I don't know if somebody in Latah County would be looking at a paper in Dallas. So I look at the local coverage. I try to look at local television coverage to see what the community is likely exposed to.
While we're here, I want to ask you some questions about the non-dissemination order. Okay. That's been a hot topic, and we've heard some of it again today. Are you aware that there's a non-dissemination order in this case?
Yes.
How did you become aware of it?
Well, the first time I became aware of it was when I was reading newspaper coverage, because that was one of the topics of media coverage, was discussing the non-dissemination order and media's efforts to have it changed. So I was able to read it and follow it in that media coverage. So that's the first time I saw it.
And in January, did you receive an email from my office with the non-dissemination order?
I believe I did.
And you looked at a hard copy again recently?
Yes.
All right. Does that non-dissemination order change how you did your work?
I'm sorry.
Does the existence of the non-dissemination order change how you did your work?
No, it did not.
Have you worked in cases where there's a non-dissemination order at other times?
Many times.
Was the sole source of the information that you use contained in the media?
Was it contained in the media? Sorry. Yes. Everything I used was widely disseminated through the media. Widely disseminated.
Did you find out where the media got the information?
Yes.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the Latah County prosecutor. And it's sad to be here, but happy to be here at the same time.
You turn it up. I can't hear.
Kohberger.
Well, I'm going to do my best to turn this up.
Yeah, you have to.
If I put the microphone up, is that better?
Yeah. So but you don't have to type out things that are recorded here.
Let me preface, there's a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can.
We don't know. We don't know what happened to these 4 students at this Idaho college, but we do know they were brutally murdered. We just don't know how, we don't know by whom, and we still don't understand why. Now, there has been a development. The attorney for one of the victims' families, Kaylee Gonsalves, the family believes that she was specifically targeted, that she was dealt with differently by the murderer, that they believe that there's forensic evidence of that, and they want answers. And they had a meeting with a list of questions. And what happened was very disturbing to them. Let's see how you feel about it. Right now, his attorney, Shannon Gray, represents the family. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having us.
So what was your overall take of what happened at the meeting with authorities?
Well, we started the meeting, when we went in, we had the Latah County prosecutor was there, Chief Fry was there from the Moscow Police Department, the 2 lead investigators. One of the lead investigators is an Officer Payne, the other one was the Idaho State Police. And we went in with really a theme about accountability and communication. Part of it was the accountability aspect of it is asking a lot of hard questions about why they made the decisions they made regarding the investigation. And the communication aspect of it is really the poor communication that they've had with the families.
Now, you know this, you're a pro. The obvious pushback is, hey, look, we're doing our best. We're totally overwhelmed. Everybody makes mistakes. We're going to tell you information when we have it. We don't have it. Why doesn't that cut the mustard with you on this?
Well, a lot of the decisions they've made, from the get-go, we still get more and more information every day about mishaps or missteps that I think the investigation has made. One of the questions we asked when we went in was, why not, within the first 24 to 48 hours, release some information about, we're looking for someone that may have missed work, that may have come in with, injuries to their forearms or their hands, things like that. It's a small community. People that have taken a vacation immediately, things like that normal things that may be abnormal to people that live in the community, and getting that out. And they said they didn't do it because of investigative reasons. It's the lack of consistency throughout. You have the Art Betke, the mayor, who says it's a crime of passion from the get-go, and then you have the Latah County prosecutor talking about the targeting aspect, and then the next day Chief Fry walks back on that. You have the coroner who is giving out all types of information, making personal phone calls to the family. And when we were in the meeting, the lead investigator, Officer Payne, didn't even know that the coroner had spoken with the families.
Idaho State Seal. At the top, Idaho State motto is shown. Esto perpetua. Let it be perpetual. Let it be forever. Idaho motto history. Jefferson Davis at the close of his book Rise and Fall of the Confederate Government. In a wish that it may be written on the Arch of the Union. Of his attempt to break up the Union, he said, I recognize the fact that the war showed it to be impractical. Lyndon Bateman, Secretary of State. Unsurprisingly, Bateman is the number 33. Guess who shares this as a motto? Sigma Phi. Might be thinking, that's not Sigma Chi. But not too fast. Totally bonkers. The eventual theft of Sigma Phi Constitution, rituals, seals, and other records from Lockwood's room in Oxford in January 1856 prompted them to change the name of the fraternity to Sigma Chi.
Very surprised to see the cops show up. And one neighbor that we talked to actually knew Brian Kohberger, and he says that he was shocked to learn that he was tied to the murders.
Oh, this is really scary for me. So even I was surprised when I saw cops there. I was like, okay, what is going on?
Students were shocked when investigators descended on this apartment complex in Pullman, Washington, after WSU student Brian Christopher Koberger was arrested for the murders of 4 college students across state lines in Moscow, Idaho. Subankar Ghosh was his upstairs neighbor.
I was like so surprised that
The two had occasionally talked in passing about their PhD programs.
because he was talkative, so when we first met, he was like, "Oh, I'm Brian." So then I was like, "I'm Subankar." So this is not common for like with other people, but he was like kind of talkative and liked to talk. So then I feel that he's a kind of nice guy who likes to talk.
Ghosh is part of the computer science department. He says Koberger talked to him about his studies in the criminology and criminal justice department.
So I was like, "How do you do your research?" I think he said like he does experiment, like goes and talk to people.
Ghosh believes Koberger lived alone. The 28-year-old was taken into custody by local police and the FBI at 3 a.m. in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area, according to a source in law enforcement. Messages seeking comment were left for officials at WSU. The Associated Press also reports that he graduated from Northampton Community College in Pennsylvania, with a spokesperson from the college saying that he received an Associate of Arts degree in psychology in 2018. Koberger's apartment is only about a 15-minute drive from the rental home where the 4 students were stabbed to death. Meantime, the arrest announcement comes on the day that 2 victims were remembered at an Idaho memorial service Friday afternoon.
It's so bad. Yeah, I'm really sorry for that.
Seriously, why is it an issue when it is only asking the same questions that Goncalves' attorney has asked all along? Only Shannon Gray is allowed to ask the obvious. You have to ask yourselves this. While we are asking questions, why so much propaganda?